He exhibited a strong odor of alcohol and glassy eyes. They found 39 empty beer cans in Mr. Kight's boat, 7 of which appear to have been shotgunned.
A 10-year-old girl is dead and a woman seriously injured after authorities say an intoxicated man crashed his boat into them at North Carolina's Harris Lake. The driver, who already has a prior DUI, now faces multiple charges, and the boat's owner has also been charged for letting him operate the vessel while impaired. That's the allegation. These are shocking new details that are emerging, including a massive amount of alcohol on board and an alleged attempt to flee. We're going to break it all down with a former detective right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. This story is an unthinkable and preventable tragedy. That's what we're talking about. And it's one that, had things been handled differently, it might have never ended up here on Sidebar. We would not be talking about it. It was supposed to be just a carefree summer day at Harris Lake in Chatham County, North Carolina. The kind of day where kids splash in the water, families soak up the sun. But instead, on Saturday, August 2nd, that peace was shattered in an instant when a man, reportedly severely intoxicated, crashed his boat into a group of swimmers. A young girl was killed, and another woman suffered such devastating injuries that her leg had to be amputated. This is beyond horrific. According to police, around 4:30 p.m., 40-year-old Quinten Kight, who, get this, already had a prior DUI conviction, was operating a boat packed with at least 10 people, including he was towing a raft that was actually carrying 2 people. Now, at the time, 10-year-old Brooklyn Carroll, a 5th grader at a local elementary school, was swimming near the shore with friends and family. And among the group was Jennifer Stell. This is a social worker and the mother of one of Brooklyn's friends. And then, out of nowhere, that is when tragedy struck. Authorities say Kight was attempting to make a turn when the boat's propeller sliced into the swimmers, killing Brooklyn and severely injuring Jennifer. Her leg had to be amputated due to the extent of the damage. And when officers arrived on the scene, Kight had reportedly returned to the Cross Point access area, the public boat launch, and that is where law enforcement made contact. They arrested him. A blood sample was taken. It was submitted for testing. The results haven't been released as of yet. But then you go to Monday, August 4th, and Kight made his first court appearance, and I will tell you that is when even more shocking details began to emerge. And we're going to get to those in a minute, but first, the charges. So Kight is being charged separately for each of his alleged actions, both for causing the death, or allegedly causing the death, of 10-year-old Brooklyn Carroll, and also for causing the life-altering injuries to Jennifer Stell. So for Brooklyn, an arrest warrant states that Kight, quote, unlawfully, willfully, and feloniously did operate a motor vessel on the waters of this state, to wit, Huron Harris Lake, while under the influence of an impairing substance, unintentionally causing the death of another person, to wit, Brooklyn May Carroll, with the proximate cause of death being the commission of boating while impaired offense. Now, in simple terms, to be charged with this crime under state law, prosecutors have to prove that someone was killed, that the driver was impaired, and that the impairment was the direct cause of the harm. The second charge in this case is actually a misdemeanor. It's boating while impaired. And the warrant says that Kight unlawfully and willfully did operate a vessel on the waters of North Carolina, namely this lake, while under the influence of an impairing substance. Now, as for Jennifer, Kight is facing a separate felony charge. This time, the warrant alleges that Kight unlawfully, willfully, and feloniously did operate a motor vessel on the waters of this state, this lake, while under the influence of an impairing substance, unintentionally causing serious injury to another person, obviously talking about Jennifer. And he's also facing a misdemeanor count of operating a boat in a reckless manner. According to the warrant, Kight unlawfully and willfully did operate his or her motorboat, this wake boat, green and colored with speckled paint, on the waters of this lake in a negligent manner so as to endanger the life of Jennifer by not looking forward in the direction of travel while operating the motor vessel and being impaired at the time of the operation. Not looking forward, that is a very significant detail here. Why? Because according to the Chatham County District Attorney, Jeff Neiman, it is a key piece of what went wrong. In court on August 4th, Neiman revealed that multiple witnesses stated Kight was actually looking backward, watching the people he was towing at the very moment of the crash. But that's not all we learned. Take a listen to what happened in court.
He exhibited a strong odor of alcohol and glassy eyes, despite the fact that there was some attempt to evacuate alcohol containers from the boat. They found 39 empty beer cans in Mr. Kite's boat, 7 of which appear to have been shotgunned. They also found 50 alcohol containers that were found outside the boat.
Let that sink in for a second. 39 empty beer cans, 7 appeared to be shotgunned, 50 containers total outside of the boat. Now we know there were multiple people on board this boat, but that kind of alcohol, that's a lot. And we know there were several passengers on board, but even so, a staggering amount of alcohol. And just when it seemed that the case couldn't get more disturbing, you get another dramatic twist, another arrest. And we're going to get to that in a moment. But first, I want to bring on a special guest who's with me here in studio, friend of the show, retired NYPD detective and co-host of the Gold Shields podcast. I hope everybody can go check it out. Tom Smith. Tom, good to see you. Thanks so much for taking the time.
It's a pleasure as always.
Investigating these kinds of cases, right? Obviously, you talk about car crashes, DUI when it comes to car crashes. When you're dealing with a boat, how is it different?
It's not. You go about it the same exact way. It's operating a vehicle, whether it's on a boat, on the water, or on the road, the same exact way when you're under the influence. The case or the investigation is not going to change. Given
that the blood test results weren't immediately available, they still make the arrest. What does that tell you about the circumstances that led to that arrest?
Well, they're solid. They know what happened. They know the cause of death. They know the circumstances leading up to it and what this individual did and the negligence. Like you said, you used the perfect word, preventable, in this. And that's enough to hold him and charge him with that. Once the blood tests come back, their charges are going to get elevated.
Now, I got to say this, at Law&Crime, particularly when we're covering stories like this, we try our best to give our viewers clear, fact-driven reports. But look, the truth is we can't control the rest of the media, and the reality is there is a lot of bias that seeps into headlines on both sides of the aisle, which is why I want to tell you about our sponsor, Ground News. So Ground News is an app that gathers news coverage from around the world, then breaks down how outlets are covering these stories, allowing readers to cut through all the noise and come to their own conclusions. So, for example, take Luigi Mangione, okay? He had this not guilty plea. Hundreds of sources reported on it, but as I click from right to left to center, the tone and framing completely shifts. In the left-leaning headlines, there's more of a focus in the outpouring of support for the defendant. Business Insider, for example, has an article titled, "Meet the Luigi Girls Who Slept Outside a Courthouse to See the Alleged Killer in the Flesh," whereas right-wing outlets spend more time on the consequences of his alleged extremism. Fox News wrote of the same hearing, Luigi Mangione heads to federal court as DOJ debuts death penalty shift. So not only do they break down the political bias of every source, but they also show the factuality and bias ratings as well as who owns each news organization. Seeing the contrasting headlines and bias reports clearly laid out not only gives you control over what you want to read, but it also offers a bit of understanding for how the other side sees it. If my job has taught me anything, it's that the news never stops. And an app like Ground News can save anyone the frustration of scrolling news headlines endlessly, only to still not know what to believe at the end of the day. Ground News takes the guesswork out of scanning media for bias, and in today's political climate, that is invaluable. Right now, Ground News is offering a special discount for new subscribers to their Vantage plan. Go to the link in our description, groundnews.com/sidebar, or check out the QR code for 40% unlimited access to their worldwide coverage. Do they have to test the cans to see when they were opened and when they were consumed? One of the things I wondered was, is it possible there were empty beer cans from a prior occasion and not that exact moment? Probably, I might be stretching, but
yeah, probably not. That's going to go with interviews with the other people on the boat, and then even him later on, once I have the opportunity to sit down with him and interview him, if he's accessible to doing that, about the number of beers that were consumed that day and the cans and all that.
How do you process the scene? How do you get interviews from the people that were involved or witnesses to what happened? Because time is of the essence, but particularly in a case like this.
Well, it's big because if you want to do the entire thing, you want a solid case. So you're going to go back and get as many people as witnessed him driving around that lake as you can. Other boaters, other swimmers, people at the dock, anyone who had anything to do with him, you're going to interview because you never know what someone's going to say. He might have showed up there intoxicated. So you want to get the people who actually saw him coming in and maybe had an interaction with him. So anyone involved in this who might have seen any part of this is going to get interviewed.
Maybe cell phone videos, although maybe unlikely. I'm not sure given that environment. It's different than if you see a car crash in an intersection. There's cameras everywhere, right? It's different on the water, I would imagine.
You'd be surprised. I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to be part of the line of questioning when you do interviews. What did you see? How did you see it? When did you see it? Do you have your phone? Did you videotape anything?
And in terms of the recall of this, trying to understand exactly what happened, it's such a traumatic event. When you're interviewing witnesses about this, is that something you have to take into consideration? Because this might have happened very fast, very traumatic. How do you try to assess that, trying to get the full story about what happened?
Well, you take your time and you're, conscious of what happened and the impact. Everyone's different. A traumatic event that you might not even have seen but heard about can impact you different than someone who actually witnessed it. So you just have to be conscious of that when you're doing these interviews and take your time, because you want as much information as you can get. So you don't want to skip anything. You don't want to rush through anything. So you just take your time.
I don't know what it takes to get a boating license or being able to operate a boat, but should there be the same level of regulation and licensing as there is to drive a motor vehicle, or how does it work?
Yeah, there should be. There are. You do need a boating license. There's a written test you need to take, and depending on the state, maybe an operator's test. But in this case, I'm not sure what had happened with that.
If there were children on his boat, by the way, it wasn't even his boat, we're going to get into that, but if they were on the one that he was operating, could you have child endangerment charges? Is it going to affect the case in any way? Because again, if the idea was he was operating this while under the influence, you wonder if this is just, he might be facing more charges.
Well, listen, if I'm the detective, running this, or the DA, I'm charging him with everything under the sun I can, because you have to be held accountable for your actions. And in this case, he has to be held at the highest level of his actions, taking someone's life and the severe injury that he caused to the other woman. Everything under the sun you could charge him with, and if it's endangering the welfare of a child, assault, all of that, absolutely.
And the idea of where he was looking, right? That was a key point the prosecutor hit upon.
Yeah, that's a negligent part. You have to operate that vehicle safely. And you're not going backwards, you're going forwards. So you have to look forward of making sure there isn't a boat, a person, anyone in front of you, and obviously he didn't do that.
So talking about potential accountability, there was another arrest. There was another arrest in this case. A second person is now facing charges in connection with this tragedy, and that woman is Anne Marie Flanagan, the owner of the boat. So police say Flanagan and Kight, they were in a relationship, and according to her arrest warrant, she is now facing charges of causing death or serious injury by impaired boating and operating the boat while intoxicated. The thing about that is, unlike Kight, her alleged role doesn't involve driving under the influence. It's not about her operating this boat. It's about allowing someone else in this alleged impaired condition to do so. Count 1 alleges that Flanagan, quote, did allow Quinten Gregory Kight to operate a motor vessel on the waters of this state, to wit, Sheeran Harris Lake, while under the influence of an impairing substance, unintentionally causing the death of another person, to wit, Brooklyn May Carroll, with the proximate cause of death being the commission of boating while impaired offense. Count 2 is nearly identical, but this time it focuses on Jennifer. Again, it says that it alleges that Flanagan did allow Quinten Gregory Kight to operate a motor vessel on the waters while under the influence of an impairing substance, unintentionally causing the serious injury of another person, and then again referring to Jennifer. And count 3 is a misdemeanor charge alleging that Flanagan did aid and abet operating motor vessel on the waters of North Carolina, this lake, while under the influence of an impairing substance. So you go to Wednesday, August 6th. Flanagan made her first court appearance, where prosecutors argued she should have recognized Kight's level of impairment, or alleged level of impairment, and stopped him from taking control of the boat. And here's what makes that claim even more damning. According to results from a breathalyzer test, Flanagan blew a 0. She wasn't intoxicated at all. During that hearing, prosecutors and defense attorneys, they sparred over her role in what happened, and some startling new claims came to light, including an alleged attempt to flee the state.
When she was asked to give a written statement, gave a false and misleading statement to law enforcement. In that call, Ms. Flanagan said her intention was to leave the state and move to Wisconsin.
Now, Flanagan's defense painted a very different picture. Her attorney noted that she is a combat nurse, claims she immediately tried to help the victims after the crash.
She rushed to the victims in this case. She stayed with the victims to this case, rendering aid.
Okay, Tom, what do you think about her role or her alleged role in all this?
I agree with it. You know, that's your boat. You're responsible for everything that happens on that boat. And the preventative measures she could have taken to have him operate that under the conditions he was in is solely her responsibility. That boat could have stopped. She could have taken over. It's her boat. She knows how to drive it. And that could have stopped. And she didn't do that.
Tom, big thing here. Prosecutor Neiman, this is something that was laid out, that Flanagan allegedly misled police. Quote, then she later wrote a misleading statement saying she was called to the scene after the accident and didn't witness. This is something Neiman had told the court. I would contend the consumption was happening right in front of her. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, you have to be truthful. You know, when someone's life has just been taken at the hands of something you own, I don't get being, you know, the not being truthful is always a red flag, obviously, in your role in something. So I agree with everything the prosecutor's doing and going after her, 100%.
What would it take to build a case against her per se? I mean, and do you find it interesting that she hasn't been charged with, you know, obstruction or evidence tampering? I'm not sure it would amount based on the charges in the state, but you know, for misleading police or allegedly misleading police, she's not facing any charges as far as I can see about that.
Yeah, I mean, they'll have to dig
false
deep.
statements to
Yep,
law enforcement.
they'll have to dig deep into that and see, you know, how misleading those statements were. Did you really get the police going in a different direction and taking it off of you? All those are going to be taken into account. But you know what? This is a classic, I think, plea deal. What's going to happen? You're going to avoid jail time. We'll make a deal with you. Become a witness for the state, tell us everything that happened and what he did. This is kind of a classic thing leading up to that, which is where I see this going.
Well, considering she reportedly blew a .0 on her breathalyzer, how does that factor into the investigation?
Yeah, well, you know, that's okay. And that...
I mean, would it have been better? I mean, would it have helped her if she was
intoxicated? No, I think it hurts more because
yeah.
you can't fall back on, well, I was kind of intoxicated too, and I didn't know what he was drinking, and that's not my responsibility. When you didn't have a drink at all, you know, and there's no signs of that, you are clearly thinking legibly and seeing what is happening in front of you and let it happen.
By the way, legal point of view, when we say someone's aiding and abetting, the allegation that she was aiding and abetting in the context of impaired operation, what exactly does that mean?
That's her allowing the actions to take place and not preventing it whatsoever. She's watching him drink. You know, again, going back to witness statements and witness interviews, what was the rest of that trip like before he actually hit these people? Did he come close to anybody else? Were there almost a couple of other accidents that happened? Those are all going to come out later when all these interviews are concluded and put into kind of one package. You know, we don't know what happened before this. Everyone's focused on this horrible event that happened that took this girl's life. But what led to this? Were there other almosts that happened that she, you know, sat there and watched take place?
And prosecutors also allege, so not only that, you know, that she was not doing anything to stop this, that she might have misled police or didn't provide entirely accurate information, but that she attempted to flee the state. I believe they said even that she was trying to attempt to go to Wisconsin. In your experience, what does that tell you? And how does that factor into, let's say, you know, bail or bond or the progression of this case? Because that's a serious allegation to make. And we talk about it as consciousness of guilt in a case.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, when you're trying to flee and get out of an area after an incident, that's not going to look good for you. That's always looking guilty or conscious of guilt, like you just said. And as far as the bail goes, you know, part of bail hearings and all that is your ability to maybe flee the state. So now it's going to come out.
Flight, yeah.
Right. So the judge is going to make that decision.
I have to talk to you about one more thing about this case. This is very concerning. Going back to Kight, this apparently was not his first run-in with the law. No, in fact, he has a history that includes a previous DUI and other serious allegations. According to court records that were reviewed by ABC 11, Kight was charged with DUI back in 2009 in New Mexico. He pleaded no contest and was ordered to complete a court-mandated DWI education program. You fast forward to 2023, Kight was once again in legal trouble, this time for an alleged hit and run in December that reportedly left a resident injured. Now, those charges are still pending, but Tom, I'm made of questions here. How on earth was he allowed to operate a boat?
How is he? You're absolutely right. I mean, you know, you have to be, again, accountability. That's what it is. If you get locked up for something like this, your future has to be held accountable for that. And in this case, it doesn't seem so. But, you know, the concerning thing is what the laws are in North Carolina when it comes to court proceedings and bringing in past arrests. Like in New York, you can't. You know, past arrests and past crimes aren't going to be in a trial in New York. That depends what happens, and what the case law is in North Carolina will be interesting.
From an investigative point of view, would you still look into that? Would you spend some time looking back into these past incidents, seeing maybe the way it correlates to what he's accused of now, seeing comparisons? Is that something you would look into?
Oh, sure. That all leads to just a history of this bad behavior, you know, and alcoholism and just horrible decisions. You know, DWI, whether it's in a car or on a boat, is a conscious thought. You can stop it. You don't have to go through with continuing to drink and get in a car or in a boat. So if that is in his past, that's all going to be taken into account. And
sentencing too, if he's ultimately convicted, it would hurt him. Is there a gap in the system for this to happen? Is there a gap that a guy with this background, again, was able somehow to operate this boat? And again, you know, they're talking about who might be responsible, not just him, but Flanagan. Again, it's so hard to prevent certain things. I cover cases all the time about domestic violence and orders of protection. It's a piece of paper, not going to always prevent things from happening. Hindsight's 20/20. Sometimes you don't have a crystal ball. There's only so much. Someone might be let out on bail in a less severe criminal case, and then they end up committing a more violent felony. But at the same time, I have to ask that question, considering he doesn't have a past of jewel theft. Right. You know, I mean, what he was accused of in the past is so eerily similar to what he's accused of now. Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. You know, the criminal justice system has so many flaws and open doors of past criminal activity that kind of doesn't get overlooked, but less lenient, or you get out on bail, and then that crime that they're charged with initially happens again at a worse level. You know, this is the same thing. He got grabbed, no one got hurt, he got locked up for DWI, but now same actions leads to somebody's death. What should the families be thinking about in terms of their future? You know, victims of crime. You have Brooklyn's family, who is now dealing with her loss. You have Jennifer and her family, who are dealing with her severe injury. Victims of crime, families of crime victims, what does their future look like? Well, an emotional roller coaster. You're going to go through sadness, rage, outrage of this whole process, you know, of his past arrests. The DAs, you know, going through a trial prep is difficult when you've lost someone, because you have to relive it. You have to go through the story again and again and again. It's not going to be a one-time shot. You know, they're going to have to relive this over the next X amount of months or wherever this trial or criminal procedures lead. And it's very difficult to do. And the prosecutor has to be mindful of that. The detectives who are involved in this are going to be there as well. So everyone just has to have compassion into what this family is going to be going through. Let's end on that point, because following this tragic accident, there were 2 GoFundMe campaigns that were quickly set up to support the victims' families during this absolutely devastating time. Brooklyn Carroll's family shared a heartfelt message on their fundraising page on Saturday, August 2nd. Our family experienced an unimaginable tragedy, the sudden and heartbreaking loss of our sweet Brooklyn May, just 10 years old. BB was a light in every room she entered, with an infectious smile, a loving heart, and a spirit that touched everyone who knew her. Her laughter, kindness, and energy brought so much joy to her family and friends. Now her parents, Kim and Matt, are facing every parent's worst nightmare. As they navigate this painful and overwhelming time, we want to lift some of the financial burden off their shoulders so they can focus on grieving and honoring her beautiful life. This GoFundMe will help cover expenses and time away from work so they don't have to worry about finances while coping with this devastating loss. Any amount, no matter how small, will make a difference. If you can't donate, please consider sharing this page and keeping our family in your thoughts and prayers. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for your love, support, and compassion during this incredibly difficult time. Let's come together to honor Brooklyn and help her family find strength and peace in the days ahead. Now, in a similar fashion, Jennifer's family, especially her husband Justin, is facing a long and difficult road ahead. Their GoFundMe outlines the immense challenges that she faces. It reads, as Jennifer begins this difficult journey, her family, especially her husband Justin, is doing everything they can to support her, but they need our help. The emotional and financial burden is immense, and any support will make a significant difference in her recovery process. All funds raised through this campaign will go directly to supporting Jennifer and her family. Specifically, donations will assist with medical bills and surgeries. Jennifer is facing multiple surgeries and ongoing medical treatments, rehabilitation and therapy. Jennifer will require extensive therapy and rehabilitation as she works to recover. Every contribution, no matter the size, will directly support Jennifer as she takes on the long road to recovery. Your kindness means the world to her and her family during this time. And in a brief statement, Brooklyn's family expressed their gratitude and their grief, saying, this past Saturday, our lives were shattered when our daughter Brooklyn died from injuries she sustained when she was hit by a boat while she was innocently swimming at Sharon Harris Lake. We appreciate the support that we have received from our family, our friends, and even strangers as we continue to grieve together. As a family, we request privacy. And Tom, just to end on one point, now there's the case, the criminal case. I do wonder what would be better. Would it be better if he pleads guilty? I don't know if it's working out some sort of deal where it doesn't go to trial. They don't have to experience this. They don't have to testify. They don't have to have a jury in the gallery see injuries and photographs and things like that. Or is justice taking this to trial and having a jury decide what's happening? Because, you always think about the victims' families and what they have to go through. And you imagine Jennifer would have to testify.
Oh, yeah. Taking the burden off testifying and going through a criminal procedure is always best, because especially horrific circumstances like this, when it involves a child and then another victim as well. And hopefully the DA is in touch with the families and going over any possible deal that might happen, and don't just spring something on them. Have them be part of the process of what they want to do. So that's going to be something going forward in both sides, what one wants or what's best for everybody.
Tom Smith, good seeing you. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Always a
pleasure. And I hope everybody can check out Gold Shields. It's a great show. Get to hear more of Tom Smith. Who doesn't want that? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.